Let's go.
Let's go. Oh, no.
Do you want to?
Sorry. I'll let you.
Next one.
I'm excited and I feel relaxed and I'm ready to party. Yo. Let's say sorry. You don't need to do that. You don't need to apologize. It's a fucked up female habit. You don't need to be sorry for anything ever.
Can you guess what every woman's worst nightmare is?
I don't have rage issues.
I have nothing to prove to you.
When I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
I say when it comes to stardom and Lauren, there are no accidents.
Hi, Karen Peterson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Citizen Dame, the podcast where I didn't even tell you this part, Lauren, but it's my birthday weekend.
Happy birthday!
Thank you.
Yay!
Thanks so much. I'm Karen Peterson, joined, as always, by Lauren Humphreys-Brooks.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Thanks.
I'm good.
Thanks. My
I'm
birthday's
tired.
actually tomorrow, so.
Awesome. Do
Yeah.
you have any good plans?
So today I'm going golfing with some friends, and then we're gonna go out to dinner, and then tomorrow the Screen Actors Guild is having a party, so.
Oh, awesome. Well,
It's the SAG Awards, so.
the entire Screen Actors Guild is celebrating you. That's amazing.
Yes, exactly.
Amazing. You have
Yeah.
such pull in Hollywood.
Well, originally, when they were doing scheduling a couple of years ago, the Oscars were supposed to be tonight, which does fall on my birthday every once in a while. And that's always fun, because then I can have, like, a birthday party and make it Oscar-themed. So, it's less fun now, because I have to, like, pay attention and work during the Oscars, but still fun, though. Anyway. Yeah. So, and then Monday is the Hollywood Critics Association Awards, so I'm looking forward to that. I will be presenting Best Cinematography, so.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. So, what's happening with you?
Well, I'm finally back in New York City, which is nice. It's good to be back. I hit the George Washington Bridge, and I was like, oh, traffic. And I was like, oh, New York. Like, we're gonna try to get there really fast, but not move at all at the same time, and it's marvelous. And if you don't close that like 5-foot gap between yourself and the next car, well, you're gonna get honked at.
Yep, it's that way in LA too, like on the 405 freeway. So fun. That's the traffic report from Citizen Dame.
Well, the weather report is that it is warmer here than it was in upstate New York, which I am very grateful for. So that's it.
How much warmer?
It's about 10 degrees warmer here.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So
that
yeah,
is significantly different, so.
Yeah, that's the usual difference. Every once in a while we get kind of a weird weather front, but yeah, it's if it's 25 upstate, it's going to be 35 or 40 here.
Yeah. Fun. Well, it was like 50 degrees last Monday, and it's going to be like 80 degrees this Monday. So, and then it's going to go back into the 60s by the end of the week. No wonder we're all getting like colds and stuff. But the climate's not changing or anything.
No.
All right. Well, we have some fun stuff to talk about. I think we should start with the bad stuff and then go into the things that we like to talk about.
So which bad stuff?
That's a good question. Well, I think, we used to always do this at the top of the show, and I think we should still. This Week in Garbage People
Oh, God.
is unfortunately back. Why don't you tell the people which garbage person we're talking about?
Well, this is an old school garbage person, and honestly, this one isn't surprising to me, and he's been kind of a name in garbage people for a while, but it's still disturbing, and it's disturbing, but at the same time, I think that there's a catharsis going on as well. So Jerry Lewis, in a recent article in Vanity Fair, and this was initially based on women who were interviewed by the directors of Alan v. Farrow, who were kind of doing investigations into sexual harassment in sort of older Hollywood. And what they came across, and there are a number of people who are still alive from that era, obviously, and what they came across was a number of women who had accusations against Jerry Lewis, for all kinds of things. And, you know, like I said, Lewis was notorious for not being nice to women. He's been notorious. He was notorious for that all the way through his life, basically his life and his career. But some of the shit that went down, and I'm not going to quote everything, but some of the things that his female co-stars talked about him harassing them, groping them, fondling them, and not just quotation marks doing that, but like when they refused him, also kind of cutting them out, basically. And one of Karen Sharp, who did The Disorderly Orderly with him in 1964, talks about how after she rejected him, after she told him no, he basically told everyone on set not to speak to her, and he would not interact with her except in the scenes where they were together. So she was like, so it was like this campaign of psychological abuse, in addition to the fact that he sexually harassed her. And this seems to have been something that he did throughout, and that Paramount in particular protected him from, because he was such a big name and he was such a major star at that point. And it's only now that a number of these women are actually feeling comfortable to talk. So you're talking about women who are now in their 70s, 80s, 90s, right? Mm-hmm. And they're talking about their experiences with this beloved comedian, you know? It's just, I really, you know, encourage people to go read the Vanity Fair article, because it's very good breakdown, but I think it also addresses the fact that this is not, you know, the Me Too movement and all that, this is not something that's new in Hollywood, particularly. The concept of the casting couch. The article even talks about, you know, articles that were written by people like Marilyn Monroe about men that were harassing them. Mm-hmm. And they don't name names because it was dangerous to, basically, you could destroy your career. But that's why a lot of women didn't come forward. But this is something that has been going on for such a long time, and it was treated as business as usual, but it destroyed women's careers.
Yeah, I think the thing, and obviously I haven't finished reading the article yet, but I think the thing that's really struck me as I'm going through it is the protection of men and this is something that we've talked about literally since the first week of this show. These types of things started to come out, and going on 5 years now. And in every facet of the film industry, from film critics groups to all the way up to, you know, major studio executives and Harvey Weinstein and all that. And I think the common thread that always strikes me on these stories is how much people will circle up, gather up, and protect these men. And it's like, why did Jerry Lewis have that kind of power? You know, how did Harvey Weinstein get the amount of power that he had, or any of these other guys? It's like, why are people so willing to just like cater to them to this point where other people, and in this case it's focusing on the women that he abused, but you've got to know that there were also, men getting, verbally assaulted and stuff like that too. There has to have happened. It's a pattern of abuse with these people. And so it's like, what? Sure, they make money. Okay, that's fine. But really, how valuable can they actually be that they're worth treating everyone else around them like nothing?
I mean, I think it comes down to money a lot of the time. It comes down to money and it comes down to power. And you're talking about a period in Lewis's career, especially when he was a big star. This whole idea of like Paramount basically putting tons of money into him. And most of these women that you're talking about weren't. People like Karen Sharp and a Jill St. John, Lainey Kazan. These were not such big stars that they were unassailable. But we've even seen with the Harvey Weinstein thing is that he went after women that were big stars. And there was still that kind of culture of complicity and of simply women. One of the ways that men do this, right, is because women are ashamed. They're embarrassed, literally. And that's what actually a number of the women who talk about Jerry Lewis are saying exactly that they were embarrassed by what happened. They were shocked and kind of horrified. And like, you know, Lady Kazan talks about having to go into therapy, right? And yeah. And like you say, it's not just sexual harassment, quotation marks around just, right? It's also the psychological abuse, this verbal abuse, this being, you know, him actively trying to make these women feel bad about themselves in other ways. And enjoying that, obviously. And so, yeah, I am certain that he went after some men, and, you know, and probably there were some men who cut him out of their lives. Probably there were some men who just kind of ignored it and put up with it and whatever. Lewis was notorious for being a son of a bitch. And so it's hardly surprising that we're now getting information that he was also abusive, sexually abusive.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like I always knew it, you know, without ever consciously knowing, and obviously, and I didn't know details or anything like that, but when I saw the tweets the other day coming through, I was just like, didn't we already know this? Haven't we talked about this before? And then I saw you had linked to the article, and I was like, oh, no, we did not know all this. So I don't know. It's just such an interesting thing, but you know, reading through it and reading some of the stuff that he did, it's just, it comes back to, again, you know, and obviously this is much less the point, but it's always striking to me how men that complain about or criticize the way women look like Jerry Lewis. You know.
Yeah, the other day I said about some actor, I was just like, well, he's an asshole, but also he looks like a thumb.
Yeah.
Right? It's exactly that. Like, and it is, you know, and we were talking about this before we started recording, that it is very much I think it's a lack of self-esteem, honestly. I think that people like Jerry Lewis, they get their kicks out of hurting other human beings. Mm-hmm. But they're doing it, they want to make themselves feel better about themselves, right? And so, and you know, I think that there's also, I don't know Jerry Lewis's biography at all, but I think that particularly people like Weinstein and others, and you actually, because they use this as an excuse as well. Just like, well, when I was young, girls weren't interested in me. And now girls are. It's just like, so you think that you know, you were entitled to women's interest in you, and you weren't given that when you were, you know, 18 years old, but now that you have power, you are taking it, basically. Yeah. Right? And essentially, a lot of the time, it is this deeply internalized misogyny where they are angry that women have not paid attention to them, and so they take out that aggression on all women, right? So one girl ignores you in high school, it's just like, well, I'm going to hurt every woman I can. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you see that again and again. So it's not surprising when it's someone like Jerry Lewis or Harvey Weinstein, because probably they have been badly treated in their lives, and instead of, you know, being healthy about that, they start directing it at any woman who kind of comes within their reach, because they get a little bit of power.
Yeah, that's true. And this is not to say that attractive men are not abusive assholes, because they obviously are too. But the types of abuse tend to be different. that's just something that I've observed, you know, is like
the attack on women's looks and on women's bodies is, I mean, first of all, it's not terribly unusual.
Right.
You know, it's just like, why? I mean, I think we've all heard it at some point. You don't look right, right? You're too fat, you're too thin, you're too tall, you're too short, all of those things. And we get that sort of attitude throughout media all the time. So it's hardly surprising that certain men would grasp a hold of that and been like, well, it's okay to, you know, mock women for being X, Y, or Z.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that.
Oh man. Anyway, but yeah, so Jerry Lewis is a garbage person, and we know this, and now we know a lot more details about why and how. And
Well, and I think that we should remember in a broader sense that this is probably true of a lot of major stars in that period.
yeah.
And that's one of the things that's really unfortunate about this. You get stories like this, but not that long ago, last year, Rita Moreno talked about the abuse that she suffered when she was in Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
when she was a young woman, kind of trying to make it, and so Marilyn Monroe undoubtedly was harassed and abused by men, probably by some very well-known men, and it was just this acceptable thing. And as the article points out, the casting couch, up until more recent Me Too movement, the casting couch had just been this sort of oh ha ha joke, right? It was like this. There was this attitude that there was this exchange going on, that the women were going to bed with these powerful men because they wanted to and because it was going to advance their careers. And it's just like that's literal harassment. That's rape, right? That's coercion.
Right.
And a lot of these women, no, they didn't want to do that, right? But they kind of did it because they understood that if they didn't, they were not going to have careers anymore.
Yeah. One thing I thought was interesting, because there's been a lot of discussion over the Me Too movement, whether it's doing any of the things that it set out to do, how much is being accomplished. And one thing I thought was interesting and I liked that Hope Holiday said was, so the article, this is toward the end, it says, Holiday sees real progress thanks to the Me Too movement as well. Quote, these guys have no choice. It'll be the end of their careers if they keep up this nonsense. Now women feel they have a place, and if we keep fighting and open our mouths and let them have what they deserve, then we've got a chance. We won't be treated like secondhand nothings. And I guess the reason that struck me was because when we talk about how things need to change, like we were talking about this recently with, before we get into this week, the crap the Academy pulled, some of the good things that are coming about, with more women getting nominated for stuff, with more international films getting nominated for stuff, and how these changes happen and we have to recognize the incremental changes. And I think that's what's happened with Me Too. It's been 5 years. Why haven't they completely upended the entire industry yet? And it's like, well, when you see the perspective of someone like Hope Holiday, who's going, well, wow, I see a big difference from, years ago. And so it's good to have that reminder, I guess, that things are changing, and that these stories, when women speak up now, there's a lot more protection. People are ready to believe them, and not just believe them, but actually do something about it. And of course, that's still not perfect, and there's still a long way to go there too. But it's such a different world than it was in the 60s and 70s, and even in the early 2000s.
Yeah, it's become much more of a national conversation. I think that women are also recognizing more and more that this is not okay.
Right.
Right. That this is not just something, well, I've just got to put up with it because that's the nature of the world. Right. And I do think that that's important as well. That's important not just for women in Hollywood, but it's important for women everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are a lot of things that we've put up with in our lives. I've certainly put up with it. That you look back on, you're like, that's not okay. That's not something that was okay to put up with, right? And there are a lot of reasons why you do, but I know that the Me Too movement has radicalized me a lot more. It's made me a lot more feminist and a lot less willing to kind of accept male bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's important as well, that it isn't just, it's a recognition for women too, right? That this world that we've been existing in is incredibly misogynist, is incredibly sexist, and it doesn't have to be. We can actually fight back against that, and there will be support. And having all of this public does mean that more people can come forward with support, more people can come forward with their own stories, and more women are being told this kind of behavior is not something you should have to accept.
Exactly. Yeah. And just like with anything that is in the middle of a change, we don't look at where we're at now and go, wow, see, it's so much better than it was 20, 40 years ago. We're done. We need to use that as the kind of the marker of like, okay, this is where we've gotten to and we still have work to do. But yeah, we have to celebrate those benchmarks and the progress as we see it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
So we will have a link to the article in the show notes so you can read it for yourselves if you have not. As I just mentioned, we will talk a little bit about how the Oscars decided to be stupid again. Oh my goodness. There's no way to transition from Jerry Lewis to not giving people their time in the spotlight, so
Hollywood is dumb.
Hollywood is dumb. It's so true. Oh my goodness. So, anybody who is in film Twitter or entrenched in the awards culture probably already knows, but for those of you who may not, this week the Academy president, David Rubin, who's from the casting branch, announced that in an increased effort to try to improve engagement and also shorten the show, they are moving eight of the awards to a non-televised pre-show an hour before the televised thing that we're gonna get to watch. 8. My mind is blown because in 2019 they announced they were going to do this. This is the year Parasite won, by the way. They announced they were going to do this, and everyone just said, no, fuck that. And that time it was going to be 4. The idea was that they would pick 4 categories, always below the line, because of course they're not going to do that with like Best Actor or whatever.
I want to see him do it with Best Picture. We're just going to announce Best Picture off air.
Well, last year we saw what happened when they didn't put it last, and that didn't go well. So,
oh, that's right. Oh
yeah.
My God, I completely forgot about that. Yeah,
I will never forget that. That was the worst. Yeah, well, it was so funny because it was one of those things where we had talked for years, like on award circuit and stuff, of like, what if they didn't put Best Picture last? What if they ended with something else? And we were like, that's dumb. They would never do that. And then Steven Soderbergh, experimental filmmaker that he is, you don't have an experimental filmmaker host the Oscars or plan the Oscars because you're going to get stuff like ending on a really sour note. Anyway, yeah, so there is so much happening with this decision, but basically the plan before that got quashed was they were going to rotate 4 categories to not show during the ceremony that they were going to do during commercial breaks. And so their rationale this time is that, well, at least it's not during the commercial breaks, but it's 8 categories. I'm trying to pull up the list right now really quick of which categories they were. It's sound, I know that. Original score, all 3 of the short film categories. And then I want to say makeup and hairstyling. I'm looking, sorry. I was not prepared.
Film editing as well.
Editing, yes.
Yeah, original score, makeup and hairstyling, documentary short, film editing, production design, animated short, live action short, and sound.
Yes.
It's
all the unimportant parts of filmmaking.
Well, but that's the thing, isn't it? Right? Like, first of all, you're like, okay, well, particularly with the short films, that's the major exposure that they're going to get, is being nominated for Oscars, right? And winning Oscars. And that can be really important for filmmakers. That can be important for, major non-Hollywood kind of forces. And so just like, oh, that's not that important, right? You don't get to do this in front of everybody. We're just going to ignore you, basically. And then you get to things like sound and film editing and production design. It's just like, oh, so all of the things that aren't recognizably flashy, right? But at this point I'm kind of like, you know what? I want all of the guilds to just be like, okay, well, we're just gonna go on strike then. You don't get editing or production design or sound or music.
Yeah.
And you let us know how that works for you, right? Like, and I would absolutely love to see that, because it's ridiculous. It's so disrespectful. It's not, I'm sorry, it is not going to make the telecast any better. It is just going to make it worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and one of my very initial reactions, because the plan is that they're going to basically close off, the red carpet at 4:00, have everyone inside the theater. This is what they claim they're going to do. Have everyone inside the theater at 4. Meanwhile, we at home that are watching a recorded red carpet, like a pre-taped red carpet. So these aren't actual arrivals. And they're presenting these awards inside. So first of all, I'm sorry, you're really going to tell us that the red carpet arrivals are more important than the awards themselves? The arrivals to the awards are more of a draw for audiences than actually watching people win them.
Well, I mean, how else would Ryan Seacrest get in his banter with Will Smith?
Yeah, exactly. And so then what they're going to do is fully present those awards and let the winners speak. And then they're going to edit, that thing that's so unimportant that they can do it not on the live show. Edit the speeches and the presentations into the telecast so that you'll still see the winners and you'll still theoretically see their speeches. And David Rubin is claiming that their speeches will be given in whole. But here's the other thing that just got announced, I think yesterday, that I was reading something where the Academy has now confirmed that they will be announcing via social media the winners in all those categories. So as they happen, it'll be like, it's the fucking Film Twitter Awards, which I can't stand. I'm so tired of all these groups doing their nominations and their winner announcements on Twitter. Like, it's so dumb. And then you're sitting there waiting for hours for, like, this Twitter feed to unfold. And it's like, now the Academy is jumping on that. It's so stupid. It's so incredibly disrespectful to these artists. And then to task the editors with doing this quick turnaround to put it into the show while also telling them their work isn't that important enough to be recognized. I'm beside myself with how terrible this is all around.
It really does feel like it's getting increasingly desperate. Because, and the Academy Awards have suffered in terms of viewership. They have, they've tried to rearrange the way that things were presented, like you said last year, moving things around, not having a host, having multiple hosts, all of this stuff, and none of it has worked, right? And I would think that you have arguably all of the greatest talent of Hollywood in this one town, right? Able to contribute their talent, and somehow none of them know how to produce a decent telecast. None of them. And they keep on trying to do this random ass shit. And you're just like, none of this is things that people want. And I'm sorry, you're not going to attract more people to the telecast by cutting out a bunch of awards. It's just because a lot of the people who aren't watching the telecast aren't watching it because they're not interested.
Right.
Period. So cutting out film editing or sound design or live action short isn't going to affect their decision to watch or not to watch the Oscars.
Right. It's like, what gets me is that they're trying to chase numbers that used to happen when there was nothing else to watch. This is the thing that they seem to not... I don't understand how this doesn't make sense to them, but it's like, yeah, sure, you used to get 40 million viewers when there were 12 channels, and everybody that was not ABC, because the ABC has had the Oscars since 1976, and so going through the late 70s, the 80s, the 90s, you would get millions of viewers, because even though there was cable, there was no counter programming to the Oscars. Every network just kind of went, well, no one else is going to watch our show. They're all watching the Oscars, so they wouldn't even bother. There was no CBS didn't have some big premiere of something and whatever. And there were no streaming services. And so it's like you had these huge numbers of viewers because there literally was nothing else to watch. Not just because oh well, they were nominating Titanic, which was actually the highest viewed Oscars ever, but there were a lot of other reasons why people were watching. And now the whole entertainment, just everything about it has changed. People are watching all kinds of different things. And what we're also seeing is the Academy just get more and more I've seen a few people make these arguments that I thought were really smart. And one of the things that seems to happen is that the Academy has become embarrassed almost of being the awards. It's like they just don't want to indulge in this anymore. They're apologizing for existing in some ways. And they just won't lean into what they are and what they're best at. And that's what we're seeing as a result, is this increasingly uninteresting show, that, and I love the Oscars. I've been watching it since I was in junior high school. But over the years, I see, as they try to tighten it up, as they try to, do different things to make it, quote unquote, more interesting, they're trying too hard to please people instead of just being unapologetically themselves. You don't see the Super Bowl trying to cater to, people I don't know, people in wherever that don't care about sports. They just are themselves, and they create an event that people who normally don't care about football want to tune into because they don't want to miss out. And that's really what the Oscars need to do, is just go bigger, not smaller. Really turn it into something again, where if you don't watch the Oscars, you're missing the show and you're missing what everyone's going to be talking about.
Yeah, and ultimately, a lot of the most successful Oscars have been the ones where it is a show, right? I remember when Whoopi Goldberg hosted it.
Oh yeah, it was a great time.
Billy Crystal, and you would have these big musical numbers at the beginning, and you have jokes, actual jokes that were funny. Yep. And repartee with the audience that wasn't for a meme or something like that. And those were kind of classic, and they were entertaining, and it was fun to watch. Right. And, I still remember Whoopi Goldberg coming out dressed as Judi Dench from Shakespeare in Love. I remember that. Right. And because it was funny, it was entertaining. It was oh, this is a reference to a movie that I've seen, that kind of thing.
And then a couple years later, when she came down on a swing, the year Moulin Rouge was nominated.
It was this sense. And I think that some of it, honestly, is that it came down to a sense of movies being fun. Yeah. Right. This is fun. It's funny. Look at these great films. Look at these stars. Look at these, performances and actors, everybody. That's what we're here for, right? And honestly, if you aren't into that, then you're not watching the Oscars. But yeah, and I mean, we've talked about the issue of streaming when it comes to the Oscars, the issue of cord cutters, people like me who, honestly, I don't know if I'm even going to be able to watch the Oscars this year. Not because I don't necessarily don't want to, right? But because figuring out how to watch the telecast becomes a headache. Mm-hmm. And I, after a while, I'm just like, well, I could just sit on Twitter and see the dumb shit that people say.
Right.
So yeah, there is definitely the sense of like you say, the Oscars need to treat this as a big production again, and stop trying to, I don't know what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring in viewers that aren't interested at the end of the day.
Well, I think the real problem, and a lot of people have talked about this too, but I think the real problem is that Disney, who owns ABC now, which they didn't, 50 years ago, but I think that they are the ones that are so concerned about the declining viewership, and they're making some really terrible choices as a result. And one of the things that they could do this year to probably fix this, at least in viewing numbers, is do a simulcast on Hulu or on Disney Plus, because there are a lot of people like you who don't have cable or YouTube TV or any other live TV option, but do have access to Hulu or Disney Plus, and they would watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's, honestly, that's how I watched the Super Bowl. I watched it on Peacock.
Yeah.
And like I got, for a month I have a subscription to Peacock Premium, right? But they got me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would absolutely do that. Like if you said to me, oh, you can watch it on Hulu, or you can pay $5 to stream the Academy Awards on its own independent app, fine, I will pay that. And there are a lot of people that would pay that.
Yeah. But the problem is, because they're not watching it on TV, there's this weird idea that people just don't care anymore. And it's like, I think just from the way that this news exploded this week, it's clear that a lot of people still do care about the Oscars. There's just fewer and fewer reasons to actually turn on the show every year. And reducing the categories from 23 to 15 and only doing the quote unquote big ones, which, by the way, are the ones where Disney features more prominently in some cases. Just gonna say, because of those 8, Disney does have nominees in most of those, but is not expected to win any of them. So, go figure. But I forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, like, just when you do this, when you say, okay, well, we're not going to include these awards, you're telling other people, you're telling the viewers they don't have to care about those awards either. Even if that's not what you think your message is, that is what your message is. It's just like a few years ago when they moved the honorary Oscars and the Jean Herschel Award off of the telecast and put it on its own night for the Governor's Awards. Nobody watches the Governor's Awards. I don't think it's even televised. We hear about it the next day. We read, we view clips. We pull audio of Angelica Houston introducing Lauren Bacall, which I did for your intro. But that's the thing. And so it's like this year, imagine how many people would turn it on just to watch Samuel L. Jackson accept an honorary Oscar. They've completely shot themselves in the foot by stuff like that.
Exactly. And the whole point, ultimately, the whole point of the Oscars, when you strip away some of the corporate interests and everything, the whole point of the Oscars is to honor cinema, right? It's to honor film. And in a lot of different ways. And so that should mean that you're openly honoring, right, all of the things that go into film. Mm-hmm. And it's important. Like, and again, I really do not believe that there's anyone who is not interested in watching the Oscars now that will suddenly be interested in watching the Oscars because you decide to do a fan favorite Twitter poll or whatever else. Like, I don't think they're actually, I might be wrong, but I just do not think that they are going to get what they want out of this.
No. And one of the problems is, one of the things that I'm a little worried about, because Hollywood loves to draw the wrong conclusions from things. That's one of their favorite pastimes. And so last year, the viewership had declined down to under 10 million for the first time ever. It was the lowest it's ever been. And a big part of the reason for that is not because of it's not because Best Picture wasn't last. It's not because it was in a train station instead of in the Dolby. It's because the year had been so weird. And, all the big movies from the studios had been shuffled around to later dates. And so the average Joe who's not entrenched in film, the Marvel movies, there weren't any to celebrate, and that kind of thing. And so it's like, you just didn't have the variety. And so I think this year, with a little bit more of that, especially with like Dune in there and West Side Story, which people went and saw and really enjoyed. And so I think more people are going to turn it on again. So I think it'll tick up a little bit. I think it'll at least go up above 10 million. I don't think it's going to be less than last year. and they're gonna go, well, see, we were right. We were right to do it this way. We're gonna keep not showing all these awards, and that's not it. That is not it.
Stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. There are a lot, I mean, obviously, there are a lot of members of the Academy that are pissed, and the way that they found out is pretty horrible. And like this wasn't a thing that the governors really had any participation in. It was like a few key people at the top of Ampus who met with ABC, and they all decided to do this and then announced it to the Board of Governors in a Zoom call. And then that started to trickle out, and a lot of members of the Academy found out when it hit Variety and IndieWire and Deadline and Hollywood Reporter. You know, they found out through the media, and they're pissed. And there are a lot of people who are now even saying that they might quit the Academy completely over this disrespect. There's a lot of calls to boycott the Oscars this year. Mm-hmm. I guess the film, the music branch. Yeah. The music branch, I guess the composers are trying to, at least this is what I've heard. They're trying to boycott, but they want the nominees for original song to also boycott. And I'm like,
that would be interesting.
It would be, because imagine if suddenly you don't have Beyonce showing up at your big show.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things they're banking on, is people showing up, like people tuning in to watch Beyonce, and yeah. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. There's still a month to go. The Oscars are March 27th, so I don't know. It seems pretty clear that this decision is not going to be reversed. But I think that if that's the case, what needs to happen is that the membership and viewers really need to send a message. Don't ever fuck with this again, because this is wrong. So, and there are a lot of ways that they can make the Oscars better and get more people, and yeah, this is not it. So, anyway. Let's talk about happy things.
Yes, let's talk about happy things.
Let's do. So when we were talking about what to talk about this week, this episode, there was not a war in Europe, so there's that. The Academy stuff.
Sorry, I'm not laughing at the war in Europe. I'm just like, oh, it was in the old days.
It was a different time.
It was a different time.
4 days ago. Oh my gosh, the world has just like, I don't. Yeah. Anyway, and we kind of were talking about. I wanted to talk about international films, international features that weren't necessarily nominated for Oscars this year. But that were really good, that we enjoyed. And then as we were going through the week, and I think you had tweeted something about the topic for today, I was like, you know what? Let's just talk about movies we liked that didn't get nominated, because there were a lot of great movies this year, and only 50-something got nominated, and we saw other ones, and we didn't do our Citizen Dame Awards, and we're not doing them. Like, this isn't surprise, Citizen Dame Awards, it's not that. But let's just talk about some of the movies that we saw this year that we loved. First of all, you finally saw Parallel Mothers. I say finally, but it's just barely in theaters, so it's okay.
I did. Well, it's finally for me, because this and like Nightmare Alley were the two that I was just like, I want to see the goddamn movie. Let me see it. Let me see the movie. Why won't you let me see the movie? Very upsetting. And actually, unfortunately, fortunately, whatever, I liked Parallel Mothers a lot more than Nightmare Alley. So
that's sad.
Yeah, it was a little sad. But yes, I did get to see Parallel Mothers, and I am working on writing a full review of it for the website, because I have a lot of things to say. But kind of picking it apart has been a little difficult, because I think it was interesting, because after what you said last week, I was kind of paying attention to the way that the stories intersect. and how they intersect and how they kind of inform on each other. And that was just like something I was paying more attention to, I think, because of some of your critiques than I would have otherwise. And I do disagree with you.
Oh, okay.
About the you were kind of talking about how the stories feel a little unfinished.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't agree because I think that they finish each other. And I kind of I think that would I think that this is a result of this film. I think in a lot of ways being a lot more subtle than a lot of Almodovar's films, which is amazing when you think about who Almodovar is. But there is a subtlety to the way that he interweaves these stories, and I think that you can't have the story of Janice and Anna without this background of the Spanish Civil War and this uncovery of the mass grave. And one of the things that I think that he's doing, and we can argue about whether or not he's successful at it, but I think that what he's doing is that he's creating a parallel between the repression of the events of the Spanish Civil War, the literal burying of the bodies and the unmarked graves, right? And the way that Janice and Anna's lives intersect with one another, um, and the secrets that they keep from each other. And I don't want to go into spoilers for this, but that's one of the really important elements. The secret that is kept uh, turns into this traumatic event, and the way that trauma achieves catharsis and achieves eventual healing is through breaking open those secrets, literally, unearthing the bodies, unearthing the lies that are being told, or the lies that are being told even by omission, which is part of what is going on. And as a result, that it results in healing and the formation of family and of culture. And so I think he's drawing a really distinct parallel and relationship between those two elements of the story. And that's why I don't fully agree with you in terms of the two concepts feeling like they're not quite connected with each other. So that was my view. I think that it is.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to just like, okay.
But well, all right then. No, I didn't think you were. But
yeah.
I mean, that's my view. I completely, I understand why you viewed it the way that you did. I just don't think that. I don't agree with you.
So I've actually thought about this a lot more since I watched the film, and the more that I think about it, the more that I do like it. But I still really feel like the two films the two storylines don't fully go together in a way that, I don't know, that I felt was satisfying. Like, I get...
I can understand that. I can understand not being satisfied with it. I think that they do, though. I do think that they go together. I think that they have this relationship to each other. And one of the things that I really like about what he's up to is that he's using... Almodovar loves women. And he loves especially talking about the relationships between mothers and children. Especially mothers and daughters, but just generally. And he's using that interest and that kind of relationship to women specifically and expanding it outward to include all of Spain. And one of the things that I've noticed also in some of the other conversations about Parallel Mothers, of the reviews that I've read from people who are Spanish or Spanish speakers who have more of a understanding of Spanish culture than I do, is the depth of what he is using. So it isn't just like it's the images and the paintings that are in their apartments. Mm-hmm. It's the clothing that they wear. It's the references and the music. There's all kinds of things that he's working into it that are very specifically culturally Spanish, and that are a part of what he's doing in building this this conversation about the very personal and the political.
Yeah. Well, and I think that a lot of those details, because I think that there are some really beautiful things about it, especially when they do finally go to her town and stuff. I think that those details are why I just really wish that he would just fully make a movie about um, this journey that these family members are still on today, and really closing those chapters for them, and really um, finding closure for these stories and the horrors that happened during the Franco regime. I guess that's the problem, is that for me, is that I just felt like I want more of both. And so ultimately I felt like it wasn't enough of either. So
I still disagree with you, but I understand what you're saying.
you're allowed to disagree.
But yeah, so
Oh, well.
I thought it was a fantastic film. I actually want to watch it again. I am the market for Almodovar films. I love his stuff. Uh, but yeah, yeah, I think it's one of those films that I want to watch multiple times, because it feels like it's like a lot of his work. It feels like it's going in one direction and then it goes in another.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like what he did with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I I I do think that it would be valuable for me to watch again, specifically because I think I was telling you that at the screening I was at, there was just this little cute old couple, and he was reading all the subtitles to her, which was really sweet but also very distracting.
Yeah.
So I'll try it again when it's streaming at my house. So, all right. So, let's see. What is another movie that you saw that was a 2021 film that did not get Academy love that you think was just amazing?
So I was thinking about this. I was just like, what are some movies that came out in 2021? And then I searched it. I was like, oh, Malignant.
Yes.
I mean, Malignant, and this is hardly surprising. I never expect horror films really to get much recognition. Maybe like special effects, things like that, but otherwise, no. Malignant is just, for me, one of the best films of 2021. It was entertaining. It knocked me through a loop. I've really enjoyed showing it to other people because they're just like, okay, you can't look up anything about this movie, you just have to watch it, right? And my parents, God bless them, they watched it. My mom loved it, by the way. My dad was a little more like, meh, I like some of it, but I was like, no, this is awesome. You don't understand. So yeah, Malignant is definitely one of those, and I honestly think it is a great horror film. It's so entertaining and so well made and so batshit in the best possible way. So yeah, I think Malignant is definitely up there for me.
Malignant is great. That's one that I love it when people discover it. Even when they don't like it, I love that like discovery of what the hell is this? It's so much fun.
It's just like, what are you what? Mm-hmm. That third act, man, you're just like, what? No, what?
Yep. Exactly.
And the thing is, watching it a second time, I was like, it's so obvious, and yet it's not obvious at all. And I love that about it.
I remember while I was watching it, texting you and being like, well, I was not expecting, and I won't say because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who still hasn't watched it, and you just were like, yep.
You go along and you're like, okay, I have some suspicions about what's up, and then you're like, no, are you fucking kidding me?
Like, I had some guesses, but that was not one of them.
And there are lines that, watching that film a second or a third time, there are lines that you just begin laughing at, because you know the twist when it's coming, and it's just like they literally, this is what I meant not that long ago, talking about, no subtext, all text. It's like they literally told you what was happening, like absolutely told you, and no one necessarily completely got it because it's crazy.
Yep, it's great. I love it.
Yes.
Let's see. There's so many movies that I want to talk about that I'm like, I don't even know what to talk about. But well, originally we were going to talk about international films, and I think there was a whole collection of really, really great ones. One of which is Prayers for the Stolen. Have you had the
I,
chance to see that
I
one?
haven't seen that one. Yeah.
Okay, so this was Mexico's submission for international feature. Was not nominated. Is available on Netflix now, so add this to your list. Um, but basically, it's set kind of in this rural part of Mexico, and um, it's this little small town, and you don't like as being from the outside. There were a lot of things where I was like, I don't really understand exactly what's happening. They're constantly worried about kids getting taken, and I didn't really understand why. But um, by the end, it's like you have a much more under a much better understanding of the political issues with this region. But it's this town where they don't really have a lot. There's poppy fields, so of course, they're harvesting poppies for specific reasons. Um, but it's really this story about these three girls growing up in this place and the relationships between them and their parents, the relationships between them and each other, and the horrors of being a girl and growing up in this place and constantly being afraid that they're going to be taken. And I don't it's one that I don't want to say too much because I feel like people just need to experience the film for themselves. But really just such amazing imagery, um and in just such subtle ways too. Like there's an early scene where like a lot of the women in this town, their husbands, the fathers of their children, have gone, to other parts of the country or up to the United States to work, and they send money back. And so there's this scene where the whole town basically is out on this hillside, all with their cell phones trying to get a signal because there's just this like one particular place where you can kind of get a signal out to make phone calls and stuff. And it's just those kinds of little touches that make this such an engaging, engrossing world that you just it's like I wanted to just help these people. I wanted to just reach in there. There's parts where they have to hide from soldiers, and some of the ways that they do that is really ingenious and also heartbreaking. Girls have to cut off their hair and look like boys and that kind of thing. And it's 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 one of those films that makes me realize how little I know about what's really happening in the world. Does that make sense?
It does. It
Yeah,
does. That sounds like a fascinating film.
it is. And Tatiana Hueso is the director. And I hadn't seen any of her other works yet. And now I'm like, I really like her. I really want to see more from her. So, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. That sounds really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, well, one of the other ones that that you had actually mentioned, Karen,
Ooh.
and then apparently didn't watch, Karen.
I,
Um,
I got nothing.
but I am very glad that I did watch it because it is a very good film, which doesn't surprise me at all given who made it.
Yeah.
But it is a great film. Is Petite Mama, by written and directed by Celine Sciamma, who also did obviously Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And it's I understand why this film didn't really get much award love, because it's a very small film. It's a very quiet film. It's quite short. It's like an hour and 10 minutes. And it's about little girls. Like it's about, and specifically, there seems to be a theme developing, the relationship between mothers and daughters. And it's so beautiful, but it's so quiet. Like, if Portrait of a Lady on Fire was a fairly quiet film, this is like even more quiet. There's
Oh.
not tons of dialogue. A lot of it is just people is just the girls especially interacting with each other and kind of laughing together and learning how to relate to one another. And it's this great kind of fairy tale almost, because there's a bit of supernatural stuff going on. but it's beautifully shot, it's beautifully written, and it doesn't, one of the things I liked about it is that it doesn't, it's about exploration in a lot of ways. It doesn't come to a solid conclusion. It doesn't say, you know, this is how we deal with generational grief, right? This is how we deal with, this is how we come to understand our mothers or our daughters. It's more about trying to make the effort to understand. Um, and it's a really beautiful film. I don't think that it's actually available to stream quite yet. But it's, I know that it's going to be on Mubi, and it's a wonderful film, and I really encourage people to seek it out when it comes out.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it comes out in April.
That sounds right. Yeah, I think the, I know the Mubi has a deal for it, but I don't know when exactly.
Okay. I totally lost my train of thought over something I was gonna say and now it's gone. Oh my gosh. I need help. Um One of the other movies that I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, I think, but I wanted to talk about here now and also encourage you to watch this one. But it's I'm Your Man from Germany. It's Maria Schrader directed it, and it's on
I've heard of
Hulu.
this. I've heard of this. Yeah.
Yeah. And so basically, it's about this woman who is, I want to say an archaeologist. I'm trying to remember if she's an archaeologist or an anthropologist, but one of those ologists. And she's been working on this particular, paper that she's been writing for years, this very specific project, and to kind of finish get the final funding for this last thing that she really wants to do, her boss kind of makes this deal with her of like, hey, I have this other thing that I'm working on, I need your help, and if you do this experiment for 3 weeks, then I'll fund your trip. And the experiment is that she needs to basically live with this humanoid android thing for 3 weeks and then give her an assessment of whether she feels like these beings should be granted rights as humans. And the so it's Dan Stevens plays the robot, and um he's basically been programmed to be the perfect man for her. Like all the things that she's interested in, understanding her needs, understanding her work, everything that like should make her like is intended to make her just like have all of her needs met and be completely satisfied, right? And she just from the beginning, she's just like, this isn't cool. This is annoying. And I don't like this. And also, why do you have a British accent? Because he's speaking German, but he's Dan Stevens, and he's just like, well, because you are most attracted to sort of exotic people with accents, and in this case, it's British, like that kind of thing. And it's just it's a funny movie and it's quirky, but it's not like it's not like a silly comedy or anything like that. It's really smart, and it really does do a great job of, there's a lot of movies that look at, what is humanity and ask that question. But this one, I think in addition to that, what I really loved about it is how it gets into the things that, we're supposed to want as people, and how one of the things that makes relationships so much fun and so interesting is to not have someone who's your quote unquote exact perfect match, to have a little bit of messiness and spontaneity and misunderstandings and all those things can just really, that's the spark that keeps people together, not just romantically but with friends too. And so I really like that it dives in and explores that. And she's also a woman who is just dealing with a lot of grief from past relationships, from past traumas that have happened, but in a really good and healthy way. And so I love this movie, and I really think you should watch it. I think everybody should watch it. Like I said, it's on Hulu, and it is very tender in certain ways, but it's not. I felt like it's not sappy, and I really appreciated that.
Oh, sounds interesting. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think you've mentioned this film before, and I keep remembering like, oh, that sounds like a really interesting film, and then I completely forget about it. But I'm glad to know that it's on Hulu now because I will
Yeah.
actually check that out.
Yeah.
One of the other ones that I don't think it's gotten much attention awards wise, although I'm honestly not 100% up on all of the different awards, is just Wes Anderson's The French Dispatch,
Mm-hmm. It got
which
0 nominations.
is such a charming, it's very Wes Anderson-y. So if you like Wes Anderson, you probably will like the film. If you don't like Wes Anderson, you probably won't. So, which is pretty true about most of his films. But I just really enjoyed it. It was very charming. It was funny. It had that I do like the edge of melancholy that are in a lot of his films because it is basically about the death of a magazine. Um, and I just really enjoyed it. I loved the vignettes. I loved Benicio del Toro as a crazy criminal slash artist. It's just I loved Frances McDermott. She really has been doing some great work the past couple of
Oh
years.
yeah, she's amazing.
It's so charming and entertaining, and so it's just a very nice, pleasant, enjoyable film. And those kinds of films tend to not get much award love, but so it doesn't surprise me. But I really did like this one, and it's on HBO Max now.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I really enjoyed that movie too. I mean, I'm a big fan of Wes Anderson anyway. I like most of his movies. And so I had heard kind of mixed things about this one going in, and I really liked the fact that it was a little bit different. Obviously, it looks like a Wes Anderson movie, um but I really liked the vignettes and the nonlinear storytelling, and I thought it was just fun and clever, really engaging, and gave you the opportunity to get to know some different people without really feeling like you have to spend too much time with them, because I think
Yeah,
certain characters would have been really annoying if I'd had to watch them for an entire movie. But
yeah,
watching for 20 minutes is like great.
yeah. None of those stories felt like they needed to be longer.
Right.
Particularly, it was just like, well, and it does in that sense. It gives a very good representation of magazines like the New Yorker, right, where
Mhm.
you read these fairly involved stories and articles, but they do not need to be book length, right? This is not
Right.
something that we need to go into any deeper. And I like that it actually gave that sensation almost of reading a literary magazine like that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the last film that I'm going to mention is not an international film. It is a very American film, and that is Shiva Baby by Emma
Ah, yes,
Seligman.
yes, I loved that movie.
Yes. Also on HBO Max. It's also playing on Canopy, so if you don't have HBO, you can watch it on Canopy if you have access to that too. But basically, it's about this girl. She's in college, and she has to go to a Shiva, which is basically a wake after a funeral. And I think if memory serves, she's not even sure who died. She just like goes because she has to, and her parents are there, and they expect her to be there. And she runs into her ex girlfriend, and she also, oops, runs into her sugar daddy and his wife and their new baby. Super awkward. And that's what I love about this movie is that it's so much awkwardness, but never in a way that made me feel like I couldn't keep watching. Like sometimes people do awkward so wrong that it's like I cannot physically handle watching this movie. But I think what was great about Shiva Baby is that Rachel Sennett, the main star, she's so captivating, and just kind of like sometimes just has to lean into what's happening to her, and she does it in a way that it's like I'm on board. I can handle watching this. Not that I want to watch her, worst fears and inclinations play out, but that I can.
Yeah, I think that that's a good description because watching that movie, I was just like, Oh God. Oh my God. Oh, I'm so uncomfortable right now because and so much of it is also stuff that she has brought on herself.
Mm-hmm.
So she brought it on herself and then she makes it worse by making some very poor decisions.
Yeah, and I think that's why watching her like embarrassment and everything play out is and awkwardness is because of the fact that it's her own doing, and you know that,
Yeah,
and it's like
there's
not that she deserves what happens, but also she kind of does a little.
well, that's the thing. She's likable, but she also has done some not great things, right?
Yes.
And I think that because she there's a degree of non likability about her. I think that it's a little easier to accept, just like, well, maybe you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Like, it sucks that it's all coming together right at this moment, but also maybe you're partially at least to blame for this.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway,
Yeah.
I find it utterly like just charming in weird ways and
Yes.
very very watchable. So,
Yes, and that's another film that does not need to be longer than it is. It is a good length. If it
yep.
had gone on for too long, it would have just reached the point of just like I can't look at what's happening to this person.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, and it feels like I don't think it's specifically in real time, but it feels like real time,
Yeah.
which I think is a big part of why that runtime works. You don't need a lot of extra information about the situation. You know exactly what you need to know going into it, and then just watch everything unfold.
Yep. Definitely.
Any other
Um,
films you wanted to mention?
the last one I just wanted to mention again because we actually talked about this a while ago, back when I saw it, and I think that you've seen it now. Is the Lost Leonardo?
Yes. We both watched
Um,
that at Tribeca last
we
year.
did. Yes, that's right. And that one, again, it's such a good documentary. It's absolutely the kind of thing that I enjoy, and it's fascinating because talk about one of those films where you think you understand what this is going to be about, and then it goes in direction just like I don't know what's going to happen next. But it's so
It's
unusual to
very
get that.
twisty and turny, yeah.
Yeah, and it's unusual to get that with a documentary
Mm-hmm.
because it's about things that have already happened, right? And in watching it, I was just like, this is going to places that I don't even know. I don't know what's going to happen next. And I was resisting, Googling it
Mm-hmm.
or look it up on Wikipedia because I'm like, I want to know what's going to happen with this thing. But it really is a fantastic film, and yeah, it's not getting anything particularly, again, not terribly surprising, but you can rent it for like 99 cents on Amazon and Apple and YouTube, and it's very worth it. It is a really enjoyable documentary.
Yeah, I have a feeling it'll be available streaming for free somewhere in
Yeah.
the not too distant future, so that would help too. But yeah, definitely check it out because it really is fascinating. It also proves that critics are kind of obnoxious no matter what their chosen art is.
Certain types of critics, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So there's definitely like some of those obnoxious talking heads in this, but also just some really fascinating backstory. I still don't know what to think about the painting itself. It's like it doesn't draw a conclusion for you, and
Well, and that's what one of the things that's so interesting about it is that you've got this painting, right? And you get that sense of awe of like this could be one of the lost paintings of this great artist.
mm-hmm.
And then at
Which
the
it
same
makes
time,
sense that they would be out there.
yeah, exactly. And then at the same time, it so quickly stops being about the quality of the painting itself.
Yeah.
Like it moves further and further away from that. It's just like, this is a catalyst for something.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I will say, and it wouldn't have changed my opinion on the film, but I will say that I wish that this had come out around the same time as Tenet because it helped me understand a major part of Tenet better. Tenet still sucks and it's still a terrible movie, but now I'm like, oh, now I get that. Because of the Lost Leonardo.
See, there you go.
Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that. I'm not gonna explain why. Anyway. Yeah. Any final thoughts?
No, as always, watch more movies. There's so many good ones out there right now.
There really are, and um, just they're even the bad ones. Just watch movies. Just watch more movies and just get immersed in these worlds. Go someplace new, like Nicole Kidman tells us at every AMC theater. Oh, I love that weird little video. It's so funny. Anyway, yeah, so that is gonna wrap things up for this week. We want to thank everyone so much for your support. Of course, especially our patrons who help make this show possible. And they are Adriana, Ali, Connor, Estefania, Heather, James, Kathleen, Carriata, Mason, Matt, Michelle, Monty, Nanina, Robert, Steve, Sharon, Tao, and Will. If you'd like to join them and become a patron yourself, you can go to patreon.com/citizendame. You do get access to the episodes come out early for patrons. We do have bonus episodes. We are starting a couple of series that will be, written word and stuff like that that'll be Patreon exclusive too. So lots of fun stuff coming that way. We're also assembling little welcome kits that will be coming out in the next week or two to our patrons as well. So yeah, that is patreon.com/citizendame. We also have our Ko-Fi, ko-fi.com/citizendame. And of course, you can check out our Zazzle store, zazzle.com/citizendamepod. I didn't end up putting anything new this week, but if you haven't been there in a while, there is some new stuff that's been added in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So definitely go check that out.
And I can confirm that the new logo looks really good on a t-shirt. I will say that right now. Yeah.
I'm so happy to know that. I need to get myself a t-shirt, so yeah. All right. So yeah, go get your Citizen Dame merch. And but you can also read our stuff and follow us along in other places. Of course, we have our website, citizendamepod.com, where Lauren's review of Parallel Mothers will be coming very soon. And other stuff's coming there too. And you can email us if you have questions or thoughts or want to just tell us how cool we are, citizendamepod@gmail.com. And of course, we have our social media accounts, Twitter and Instagram. We are at citizendamepod, and Letterboxd, we are at citizendame. Lauren, where can people find you?
I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at LHBusiness.
And I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Karen M. Peterson. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
We come to this place for magic.